Alright, let's see if this was worth the 8-year wait. Or I guess if you want to get technical, 10-year wait since I played this on console. But regardless, yes, this game actually took that long to make. And although I'm not personally one of those people that waited for it, I only played the first game last year, it is pretty cool to see a game that took very long to make finally make its way out. Although on the flip side, it does remind me of the only other game that I know of that had a very long development cycle, that being the infamous Duke Nukem Forever, which the less said about that game the better. So then I guess that reposes the question of, was this game worth waiting that much time for? Or did it just simply put disappoint? Well, let's start this review off properly with this game's story. Set 3 years after the events of the first game, we rejoin our heroes, as they try to deal with a new set of robots randomly attacking people. And well, the trio of Lilac, Carol, and Mila get back together in order to try and find the source of these random robot attacks, and put a stop to it. But this time around they are not doing it alone. That is because Nira, who was a minor character as well as minor enemy in the last game, has tagged along for this adventure. And well, that's more or less the long and short of it when it comes to the plot of this game. And I really don't want to get into it much deeper so I don't spoil anything. Because it is full of great characters, character journeys, subplots that are all worth seeing for yourself. Although having said all that, I do want to spend a minute here to discuss the main villain of this game, since Brevin from the first game is such a hard act to follow, and to see if she actually lives up to him. That being the ancient water dragon Murga, a creature deemed so powerful that she needed to be sealed away by the power of the Kingdom Stone. Now she's awoken thousands or hundreds of years later, I honestly don't remember, because of the events of the first game where the Kingdom Stone got, broken up. And well, she wants to get revenge on the world for all the stuff that happened in the past. Which is stuff I really want to talk about, but at the same time, I said no spoilers, so I really can't. So instead, I'll just bottom line it. Which is, although Brevin is a great villain, he has one thing that you really can't do with him, which they did greatly with Murga. That being making her an actual character, giving her actual depth, and making her sympathetic, as opposed to making her a cartoonishly over-the-top evil villain like Brevin. So in other words, yes, she does live up to Brevin, just in different ways. But anyway, that covers just about everything I can cover when it comes to Murga and the story as a whole, without encroaching onto spoiler territory. So I suppose I'll move on to the gameplay next. And well, this game is exactly what you expect it to be, a fast-paced action platformer. You'll be constantly moving fast while fighting against enemies through every level. Although when it comes to this game in particular, the people who made it specifically said they wanted to move away from their Sonic fangame origins in order to make something more uniquely their own, which I suppose is one way of saying that this game, although looking like a Sonic game, will not completely play like one, with the levels being a bit more exploratory, and the combat being much more in-depth. Especially more so that second one, since when fighting enemies you need to hit them more than once in order to defeat them, and all the bosses have their own unique patterns you have to learn, and you yourself need to learn how to use the new dodge mechanic. And then on top of all this, all 4 main characters have a different type of fighting style. So yeah, the combat plays a big role in this game, even more so than in the first one, I would say. Another new thing that was added to this game that separates it from a Sonic game is the items that you can equip before going into levels. Items that you buy from stores throughout the game, and then you use them to go faster or do more damage, or other stuff like take less damage or have more health. So yeah, they're a neat little boost to help you out while playing. Alright, that covers, I guess, all the new stuff, so now I'll move on to how the 4 characters actually play, and discuss how they differently play from their original versions in the first game. Starting off here with Lilac, the water dragon, who is still the speedster of the group, since she is still the fastest character and still has the dragon boost ability, which makes you go into a sudden burst of speed real quick. And she also still has her basic hair whipping attack as well as her cyclone attack. And realistically, she's probably the character that's changed the least from the first game, with me not noticing anything that she lost but instead just gained to make her better. The first being that if you hold down the guard ability with her, it doubles as an attack, which can be pretty useful. And second being actually something that I had an issue with in the first game. That being whenever you used a Cyclone attack, it would take a little bit of power from your meter away. And because of that, you could never combo a Cyclone with a Dragon Boost, and that always just bugged me because they would work so well together. Well, that's not an issue anymore. Cyclones don't drain any power and you could just combo away with both of them. But anyway, that covers Lilac. Now on to the next playable character, which is Carol the Wildcat, which if I remember correctly I called the most agile of the group, since her whole playstyle is about pouncing, rolling up into a ball, and wall climbing. Well, wall jumping. And well, if I'm being completely honest, I did not like playing as her in the first game. I mean, she wasn't too bad, but I just didn't like her playstyle. With no ranged attacks, a crappy special ability, and not being able to double jump. And her motorcycle feeling like once you got it, you would like immediately lose it. And not to mention her very underutilized jump pads. But that's how she plays in the first game at least. How does she play in this game? Well, I am happy to say that she is easily the most improved character, with her special ability now actually being something where she throws like a ninja star then catches it by going towards it, her motorcycle just playing a whole lot better than in the first game, and her underutilized jump pads just being removed altogether. So yeah, I'd say it's a definite upgrade. I actually enjoyed playing as her in this game. Next up is Mila, who I described as the glass cannon powerhouse in the first game, which was because she had a very overpowered attack in the first game, but it was made up for with the fact that she had like half the health of the other characters. She also had smaller attacks as well as a shield that could deflect enemy projectiles. She could also fly as well as dig up items from the ground, and for the most part in this game that all kinda just stayed intact. Although her main ability has gotten easier to use, in which you just hit the guard button in order to get a cube for a big attack, making it much easier than in the first game where you had to be vulnerable for a few seconds in order to get one. Although unfortunately for a trade-off of you getting it easier, it doesn't seem to pack as much a punch as in the first game, since the beam seems so much smaller. And if you keep using it in rapid succession, the beam just keeps getting smaller and smaller. And the other thing I'm disappointed about is that they removed her ability to dig up items. Although I do concede that it was pretty underutilized in the first game, much like Carol's jump pads. But where Carol's jump pads were completely removed, there's still a digging animation for Mila, which gave me the false hope that it was still in the game, and even more disappointment when it turned out it wasn't. So then that makes me question, was this supposed to come back? Was this just an Easter egg? I mean, why is this animation still here? But anyway, despite those two minor disappointments, Mila is still a fun character to play as, especially more so now that she doesn't have the health restriction anymore. But anyway, that covers the 3 previous characters that you played as in the first game. Now onto the entirely new one that you play in this one. That being Nira the Frost Knight. And now I would say that she is the one who properly earns the title in this game of being the new powerhouse, as her fighting style involves the ice staff that she wields, allowing her not only to freeze enemies but do massive damage. Also, the fact that if you hit the guard button when your bar is full, she'll go into like a special state where she'll attack and move much faster, as well as obviously do much more damage. But all this powerfulness kind of comes at a price. That being that playing as Nira is kind of awkward. Since she's using her staff, the attacks she does kind of come out a bit more forward or above you than you want them to be. So because of that, you kind of have to compensate with her attacks by attacking like a half second or like a second earlier than you would normally with the other 3 characters. And well, if I'm being honest, this is kind of why she's my least favorite character to play as. Although I will say that she is perfectly fine to play as still. She's nowhere near as bad as playing as Carol in the first game. And I know she is one of those characters that if you actually properly learn how to play, you can like rip through the bosses really easily with her. But anyway, that covers Nira as well as the entirety of the 4 playable characters. And well, I gotta say, there is a whole lot of diversity here. It's great that no 2 characters play the same. Anyway, with that all said, I suppose I should move on to my next topic here, that being this game's graphics. And well, to put it simply, the graphics in this game are great. It's a major upgrade from the first game, and that's really saying something considering how good the first game already looked. But everything in this game is just so vibrant and cartoony and anime-ish. I mean, everything is just so bright and colorful and full of life. And not to mention like the great character and enemy animations that are so fluid, or the many differently designed characters and enemies there are, plus the many differently diverse and differently styled landscapes of the levels, as well as the hub worlds and the overview map. Yeah, this game is just a visual treat from start to finish. Alright, that covers the graphics for this game. So I suppose next I'll talk about the music for this game. And well, the music in this game is just simply phenomenal. And that's really all I have to say about it because it's just really that great. Like, there's virtually no bad music track in this game. And I would say easily the best part about it is the fact that there's so much like stuffed in here. With there not only being like regular stage themes, but there being like themes for the overview map, or when you're in different hub worlds, or going up against different types of bosses, or even every character having their own different results screen music. Yeah, no, this game is like filled to the brim with so many pieces of music, it's honestly impressive. Although the one minor knock I could have against it is the fact that it doesn't do what the first game did. That being having an Act 1 regular piece of music and then Act 2 being a remix of it. I suppose due to the fact that this game doesn't have Act 2s anymore. But it's all forgiven considering just how much they packed in here. Especially more so considering I think some of these tracks are supposed to be remixes from the first game anyway. But with all that said, that covers the music in this game. So I guess to continue mirroring the review I did of the first game, I'm gonna continue here with the general negatives I have with this game, or at least the ones that I haven't brought up yet. And these few negatives I have are gonna be most likely 100% like nitpicky, but with that said, here we go. The first of which is that this game doesn't acknowledge Torque at all, him being a pretty important character from the first game. And while I'm not saying like he had to appear in the game, you don't need every single character from the previous one to come back, but it just seems kinda odd that he's not even mentioned, and it's unfortunate because there really is an easy solution to this. It being related to a video you could watch early in the game that recaps the events of the first game. And at one point, the person speaking says that Lilac defeated Brevin with the help of her friends. Well, actually it says, and her friends to be more accurate. And the words her friends are colored to represent Mila and Carol. And well, all you really have to do is change that and into another shade of green and boom, there you go. Proper Torque representation, even if it is small and subtle. Alright, the next thing I kinda didn't like in this game was the characterization of General Serpentine, with him being turned into a full-blown idiot joke villain, and because of that, that kinda ruins his image of being a legitimately threatening villain, like he was in the first game. Or at least that's how I see it. I wouldn't be surprised if he was supposed to be seen as a joke villain in the first game as well. But at least in that game it's not like over the top, in this game they just go all in with it. Next is the final story related thing I could think of. That being related to Mila's backstory that we learn in this game, which unfortunately due to spoilers I actually can't say what that is. But for those who know what it is, it makes no sense that certain characters never brought it up. In the first game at least, it makes no sense that they waited till the second game for it to be brought up. Or at least it makes no sense in-universe, with the real-life obvious answer of her backstory was probably written after the first game got released. But anyway, I believe that covers all my story complaints. Now for my few negatives about the gameplay. And while I believe that there are two that I haven't mentioned yet, the first one being the minor of the two, but still kinda weird. That being that, for whatever reason, this game hides the classic mode from you. Classic mode being the version of the game where you play through with no cutscenes. And I mean, I kinda get it because it's like you get a reward for beating the game. And it's not really that big of a deal because you could skip all the cutscenes anyway. But still, it's kinda just weird to go from it being just available to you in the first game to you needing to unlock it in the second game. I mean, this honestly feels like it's backwards. This would be a mistake they made in the first game, but then fixed in the second one. But anyway, on to my second gameplay negative. That just being a simple listing of the 3 levels that I thought were a bit of a dud in this game. Well, 1 not being that too bad, 1 being really boring, and 1 just being a bit too hard. The first one being the level Lightning Tower, which is just this really painfully average experience of going up a tower with like a few boring and tedious puzzles that you have to do thrown in, and then top it off with a very tricky boss that I legitimately hate, since you're fighting him on a rail and you're just constantly moving. Next is the level Ancestral Forge, which is an entire level of just nothing but tedious and boring puzzles to do. Yeah, no, puzzles in a game like this are not my favorite at all. I always dread when I get close to this level. At least the boss isn't too bad, but you always have to beat him quickly to get the par time, or else you have to restart this 15-minute par time level. But anyway, that leads me to my final least favorite level, that being the true final level of the game that you need to unlock. And well, specifically I said that this one was a bit too hard. That is because in order to beat it, you need to do puzzles that make you stand still, but if you stand still for long enough, you end up dying. And then once you get to the end of the level, you need to fight against the true final boss. A fight so damn hard that the game actually doesn't game over you. No matter how many times you end up dying, you just get put to the last checkpoint. But still, this is just overall a very difficult level. And I mean, I get it, it's the true final level of the game, so it makes sense for them to go all out. But that doesn't necessarily mean I have to like it. But anyway, that covers the 3 levels I didn't necessarily like in this game. And well, I gotta say that it's a pretty good track record that I only disliked 3 of the 31 levels that this game has. But anyway, that covers all the negatives that I have with this game. So now I'll move on to the final topic I want to cover with this game. That just being the general positives that I haven't mentioned yet, as well as the many little details in this game that I love. The first general positive is actually something that I had an issue with in the first game, that being that there was virtually no penalty for losing all your lives and getting a game over. Since no matter how many lives you lost, you would always end up back at the last checkpoint you were at, and I felt as though this shouldn't have been that way. Instead, you should have went back to the beginning of a level when you lost all your lives. And while I'm happy to say that this game fixed that by actually making a penalty when you lose all your lives, and they even made it better because whenever you lose a single life, you actually have the ability to immediately get back into the game without going back to the last checkpoint, with the trade-off of you coming back with virtually no health. Although now your lives do not carry from level to level, they instead reset every time. But despite that, this life system works a whole lot better than in the first game, with there now being a proper risk and reward balance. And before we move on from the lives, I actually want to say that there's a really cool detail that I love with them. That being the fact that the head next to the life counter actually moves and blinks while you're playing. And again, that's just a really cool and neat detail that I love that you might not notice when playing normally. The next 2 little things I want to mention are story-based ones, which is to say they happen at specific points in the story and easily can be missed. The first one being related to early in the game when Carol goes off on her own to do something. And it's just really cool that when you're playing as Carol, you could actually go back to where the other characters are, and you end up getting like a bonus cutscene for this specific set of events. The other thing I want to mention is involving the museum in this game, which is a place where you rebuild all the bosses so you could fight them again. And well, one of the things that ends up there is one of Serpentine's robots. And well, I just thought it was really cool that if you go there while he's currently allied with you, his exhibit is like out of commission. Instead, there's just a note that says he took back what's rightfully his. Moving on, the next thing that I like in this game are the little like bonus mini games and challenges, like the target challenges or the one-on-one fights, as well as the gong mini game where you have to hit as many gongs as possible to get as high a score as possible before hitting the ground, combined with the extra endurance and combat challenges, as well as a few unique extra bosses to fight, with the availability to refight any boss that you've already beaten in the game so far. With all of this combined, you really do have a good, cool amount of side content to get lost in. Now on to the last little detail that I can currently think of that I really love in this game. it being a bit of a spoiler, since it's related to the big super weapon that Murga wants to acquire, more specifically its name, which is Bakanawa, and well, I thought that was just a cool name for it to have, until after playing the game and deciding to look up what a Bakanawa actually was. And I just gotta say, it's a really cool detail that if you have prior knowledge of what a Bakanawa is, then you know where the story of the game is going, and that's probably where I should stop here, because there is many other things that I could probably keep going on about. But anyway, that covers all the positives and little details that I love in this game, and well, I guess that also concludes the entire review as a whole. And well, in order to conclude this review, I feel it appropriate to show you something, that being a specific YouTube comment that I stumbled across at some point, and well, I just really like it because it kind of just sums up going from Freedom Planet 1 to this game, with the commenter comparing it like going from Sonic 1 to Sonic Mania, and I think this is just a great comparison, although looking at it again, it's probably more like going from Sonic 3 and Knuckles to Mania. But anyway, with that all said, now that's the end of this review. And well, to answer the question posed at the beginning of this review, yes, this game was easily worth the long wait. Alright, so this is just something really fun to do that looks really funny. Go to play as Carol and go up against the fish robot boss. Put on max potions that make you move faster on the ground. And well, once you're in the boss fight proper, just hold down the X button, or whatever button you use to attack. And well, just sit back and watch Carol's stupidly fast attack animations.